Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our thought for the day. If you're joining us from the church or from the wider community, we want to give you a really warm welcome. Life is changing around us, as we keep saying, continue to say, and just in the last few days, more and more of life in the UK has begun to shut down. We've been given more and more strict restrictions and rules. We're told where we can go, what we can't go, where we can't go, and what we can and can't do. And there was lots more anxiety than there was just even a few days ago. The advice is, if you have symptoms, to stay isolated for 7 days, and if you're in a house or accommodation with more than one person, all of you to be isolated for 14 days. We're told if people with serious underlying health conditions are supposed to isolate for 12 weeks. And then we're given the generic advice, aren't we, just to stay in and just to not interact with people in gatherings at all. And it's really quite hard, and I really wonder how you're getting on with isolation. It's a really odd thing to be going through. We can thank God that the sun's beginning to come out, so at least we can go outside to our gardens if we're lucky enough to have them. But I wonder how you're coping with isolation. You'd have seen the pictures from Italy of people singing from their balconies and trying to get some form of morale going. Not quite sure we're going to manage that on my road because it's not going to sound very good, especially if I join in. But isolation's really hard. I watched a very funny video this week, which I must share with you. A man's asked, told, because of coronavirus, you'll be isolated. You have two options, the video says to him. A, do you choose A, to be isolated with your family, or B? And as the man says B, the man being asked the question says B. B, 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 B. And there's lots of people dreading what life's going to look like over the next few weeks. In preparation for today's thought, I found my mind going back to a story in the Old Testament, the story of Noah and his ark. And if you've ever attended Sunday school, or if you're familiar with the Bible and church, you'll know the story well. A flood comes upon the earth, and God instructs a man named Noah to build a giant boat, an ark, in which will house his immediate family and two of every kind of animal on the planet. And it's an amazing story, and there's lots of things we could talk about that story, but that's for another day. But I found myself thinking of this story this week and reading parts of it, and actually I was struck by a question. What on earth did they do in the ark? And I've never ever thought about that. Funny how life and your perspective changes. But I thought, what on earth did they do? They would have had various animal things to clean up, I suspect, and various things to do and feed. But what did they do in the ark? Of course, their situation and the story of Noah is very different to the isolation we face. But there are some similarities. For example, the Bible tells us that God shut them in for their own safety. Genesis chapter 7, verse 16 says, then the Lord shut them in, shut him in. So they got into the ark, God shut the door so they would be safe during the flood. We are shut in for our own safety. We're told as well that there were 40 days worth of rain. The government was saying at one point that we might be isolated for 45 days. But there's another similarity to us as well. They were in the ark for about a year. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but they were in the ark for about a year. And we're being told, aren't we, that we are to remain socially distancing from each other and probably isolated for quite a lot of the next 12 months in one form or another. And it's quite an unnerving thought. And so back to that question, how are you coping with isolation? What are you doing to make sure that you hold it together? For many people, this is the worst possible thing to go through. For many people, to be stuck in their own head is simply horrifying. Many of us have got thoughts and experiences, baggage from the past, that we do our very best to keep ourselves busy and avoid at all costs. But here we are being forced to be quiet. Here we are being forced to switch off. Here we are being forced to remain just us and our thoughts. And so how did they wait in the ark? Because that's all they did was wait. Well, let me tell you what they did. They waited with hope. You see, Noah and his family knew that God would one day open the very door he closed. They knew one day the waters would recede. They had a sense of hope that carried them through that year. They knew the day would come when this ending would become a beginning. They trusted God, a God they knew who was sovereign over world events. They trusted him that he would open the very door that he'd shut, that the waters would recede, and that the end that was there would be a beginning. And so my message to you this afternoon is, don't fear the quiet. Don't fear the isolation. Make it a positive experience. Reach out to family and friends. Do things you've not done for a long time. Read a book, learn a new skill, but there's one other thing that you should do. Listen to the words of Psalm 46 verse 10, where we're told, be still and know that I am God. Why not use this time to engage with God in a new way, to reach out to him for the first time, to listen to what he is saying to you? God is real. God is alive. He is the King of Kings. And he reaches out to those who are brokenhearted and who are lost and who are scared. And I believe he speaks to every single one of you. Take this time to be in his presence, because we're here for the long haul and God wants to be with you in it. God bless you, and we look forward to being with you tomorrow.